that? What planet is that?
That is not a planet. That, says the United States, is a giant Chinese spy balloon.
I am here in Billings, Montana.
Floating some 60,000 feet above the state of Montana.
It's been there stationary for about the last 35 minutes.
In fact, the US has been tracking the balloon for several days. And this close-up reveals the hardware attached to one side that China claims is simply tracking the weather. A meteorological airship, they insist, that's simply been blown off course. But the US begs to differ.
We know that it's a surveillance balloon, and I'm not going to be able to be more specific than that. We do know that the balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law, which is unacceptable.
Of course, China has its own version of the story. In a tweet, the Chinese Foreign Ministry was quoted as saying the airship was used for mainly meteorological purposes. Affected by the westerlies and with limited self-steering capability, it deviated far from its planned course. Conservative had considered shooting the balloon down while it was over a sparsely populated area of Montana yesterday, but decided against it because of the risk of falling debris.
China has admitted that a suspected spy balloon which has entered US airspace is theirs, but says it is a civilian airship which is conducting meteorological and other scientific research. American officials say they're tracking the balloon, which has been over the US for a couple of days now. Fighter jets have been put on standby, but the White House has decided not to shoot it down for now. Professor Michael Clark is in the studio with me. Michael, good to see you again. Good afternoon. Where exactly is this balloon? And I say balloon, but it's rather large, isn't it?
Yes. Everything is measured. International comparative measurements are either London buses, Wembley or Wales. And this is 3 London buses.
That's huge.
So it's big. And it carries several kilos of surveillance equipment, we assume. And it has travelled over the Aleutian Islands, and it's hovering over Montana. And the reason that Montana is important, a lot of these northern states are important, because that's where the American missile bases are. They're intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're Minuteman III. The important missiles are in the north of the country because the shortest distance between America and Russia is over the North Pole. That's why they're in the north. And although nobody lives there, or very few people live in this part of the United States, very underpopulated, this is a very sensitive area. And the red areas that we've marked on the map there, those are the areas where the satellite bases to launch the missiles are sited. And so every base, so the Malmstrom base or the Billings base, has 50 missiles, and those missiles are in groups of 10. So there are 5 launch control points connected to every base. And the red area shows you the distribution of the launch control points. They're quite well spread out for obvious reasons. And this balloon has been hovering over them for some time. And it's really upset the Americans. I mean, the balloon is at, we guess, something above 60,000 feet. Aircraft get to about 40,000 feet. They could fire rockets at it. But the point about the balloons is that they go above the level that aircraft can fly at effectively.
So and even though they've said the fighter jets are
exactly, yeah. So they occupy that space between the ceiling for aircraft and satellites. And so they're into the stratosphere. And these balloons can just hang around for a long time, surveilling and listening and collecting information.
Breaking news, the U.S. tracking a suspected Chinese spy balloon flying over the United States. This is a picture of the balloon, and that balloon is the size of 3 buses, and it was over Billings, Montana. Video from our affiliate in Billings also shows it flying high in the sky over the city, right? I mean, it's there, very visible. U.S. officials said the balloon was observed over Montana after flying over Canada. President Biden has been briefed on the situation, and a senior defense official says he requested options on how to deal with the massive balloon. The military has so far decided against shooting it down.
It has been for several days. The Pentagon says they've been tracking this since it entered U.S. airspace, essentially, coming in from over Canada, and they have been monitoring it since then, even launching F-22 fighter jets to keep an eye on this. The Pentagon says it has traveled over a number of sensitive sites, and although they won't specify what those sites were, we already know that Montana, for instance, is home to ballistic missile silos. So it is possible that that's what this balloon was going after with its surveillance, its intelligence gathering capabilities, as the Pentagon keeps an eye to see where this is going. and what's happening here and how it evolves over the next several days here. The Pentagon obviously very concerned about this. They do say this has happened several times in the past. They haven't said when, but they did say it happened in previous administrations. Of course, the key question is, what do you do with this? President Joe Biden was briefed about it. He asked for military options, but senior military leaders, including Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Mark Milley, advised against shooting it down, at least for now. There is some risk to people, to essentially facilities on the ground if you shoot it down. Not all that much. Montana isn't the most populated state, but there is some. Crucially, though, the Pentagon says they don't believe this gives China any huge surveillance or intelligence gathering capabilities over the satellites they already have.
Our cover story tonight is about China's murky web of espionage. Earlier in the day, reports emerged about a Chinese spy balloon spotted over the United States. China's foreign ministry later said that a balloon that America suspects of conducting surveillance was a civilian airship used for research, and that the airship has limited steering capability and had deviated far from its planned course because of the winds. It said China regrets the unintended entry of the airship into American airspace. But a series of questions still remain. We also tell you how miles away in Antarctica, China has announced a new station. Is China's espionage now entering the next phase? Our cover story tonight seems straight out of a Hollywood spy thriller. There is a balloon high in the sky floating above history's greatest power, America, threatening America's national security, and Americans don't seem to know what to do about it. Reports earlier emerged of a spy balloon believed to come from China floating above Montana, where America has several nuclear missile silos. I am not making this up. Have a look at this. This is what we are talking about. This is the suspected Chinese spy balloon flying over the city of Billings in Montana. It was first spotted by a local resident and then by multiple others. In fact, if you go to Twitter, you will find countless eyewitness videos of this. In fact, spotting it seems to have become a raging trend. Everyone in Montana wants to get a glimpse. Let's first play out for you a statement by a Montana resident who first saw this.
I was actually at work and I was getting ready to leave for the day. And just a few minutes earlier, I'd seen some news reports of some airspace restrictions here in Billings. And so I thought that was a little suspicious. And I was looking out the window like I normally do, and I just happened to spot it out of the corner of my eye. And at first I thought it was a star, but I thought that was kind of crazy because it was broad daylight. And when I looked at it, it was just too big to be a star.
Now, before I go further, you must know this. This balloon from China was apparently doing surveillance of American nuclear assets in Montana. It was first spotted, according to the Pentagon, near the silo fields at the Manstrom Air Force Base. And what is China saying about this? China's foreign ministry has said that a balloon that America suspects of conducting surveillance was a civilian airship used for research, mainly meteorological purposes. The statement said the airship has limited steering capability and deviated far from its planned course because of winds. It said China regrets the unintended entry of the airship into the U.S. airspace. And this raises a series of questions. The questions that remain. How long has the balloon been flying there? At least 2 to 3 days, as per officials. Officials will admit that it has been there for at least 2 to 3 days. Obviously, this means it could have been there for much longer. And what are the authorities doing about it? Last we checked, the U.S. military had mobilized F-22 fighter jets, but it had no plans of shooting the balloon down. It is waiting for orders from the White House.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few things at the top, and then we'll get right to your questions. So first, as you can see, we are conducting press
Aktibong
briefings here in our
sinusubaybayan ng
temporary
US
press briefing
ang
room
isang
while our
high-altitude
primary
na Chinese
location
espia na balon na
undergoes
lumilipad
extensive
sa
technical
ibabaw ng
renovations and
kontinental ng
upgrades.
United
We
States.
do greatly
Patuloy na
appreciate your
sinusubaybayan
patience
ng
and
gobyerno
flexibility as
ng
we
US
work to
ang
install some
surveillance
long
balon
overdue
na kasalukuyang
upgrades to
nasa
Pentagon
ibabaw
press
ng
briefing
Montana
room.
at sinabing
Because we do
maaari
not
pa
have
itong
internet
mabaril
or
pababa
phone
ng lobo.
capability in this area of
Ang
the
tunay na
Pentagon for a
layunin ng
variety of
reconnaissance
reasons.
baloon ay hindi
Our
alam.
normal call-in options will not be
Noong
available.
Pebrero 2,
So for
ang
those,
North American
who
Air
have had to
Defense
call in, we
Command ay
apologize
naglabas
for the
ng isang pahayag
inconvenience.
sa Twitter
However,
na nagsasabing
we will
ito
aim to
ay
get our briefing
natukoy at
transcripts and the audio
sinusubaybayan
up
ang
as
isang
quickly as
mataas
possible
na
for
altitude
reporting
surveillance
purposes.
baloon
We'll
na
also
nasa
aim
ibabaw
to
ng
answer your
kontinental ng
questions through our
Estados Unidos
DoD
ngayon.
press desk, when you
Sinabi
send
rin ng
them to
pahayag
us.
na si Jen
Moving
Glenn
forward,
Van
we'll
Hert,
look at ways to
commander ng
improve our
NORAD,
briefing
tinataya
operations
ang
and the
lobo ay
facilitation,
hindi nagpapakita
and
ng
expect
militar o
that our
pisikal na
regular
banta
press
sa mga
briefings
tao
will
sa
resume
lupa
back
sa
in the
oras na
press
ito.
briefing room in
Ang
middle
Air and
to
Space
late
Forces
May.
magazine ay
So
nagulat
again,
na ang
we
NORAD ay
appreciate your
nag-scramble ng
patience and
dalawang
flexibility and
F-22
extend
Raptor
our thanks
fighter
to the
mula sa
Department of the Air
Edwards
Force
Air
for
Force
allowing us
Base
to
sa
use
Nevada
Airman's
noong
Hall
Pebrero
as our
1
temporary
upang
briefing
harangin ang
home.
Chinese
In
Esquiwa
other news,
baloon
Secretary
at
Austin
isinasaalang-alang ang
yesterday
pagbaril
from a very
dito.
productive series of
Ang
meetings in
lobo
the
ay
Republic of
kasalukuyang
Korea and the
naglalakbay sa
Philippines.
altitude na
The
higit sa
Secretary
komersyal
and
na
his Korean
trapiko sa
counterpart, Minister
himpapawid,
Lee Jong-suk,
idinagdag ni NORAD.
jointly
Sa
reaffirmed
isang press
measures to
conference noong
enhance
Pebrero 3,
extended deterrence on the
sinabi ni
Korean
Press
Peninsula.
Secretary Air
The
Force
two
Brig.
leaders additionally pledged to
Inilagay ni
closely
Jen Patrider ang
cooperate
taas
regarding
ng
U.S.
lobo sa
strategic
60,000
assets in the
talampakan.
future, as well as
Karaniwang
further
lumilipad ang
expand and
trapiko ng
bolster the
komersyal
level
na
and scale
airline
of
sa
combined
average na
exercises
35,000
and training.
talampakan o halos 4 na milya
In
sa
the
ibaba ng
Philippines,
lobo.
Secretary Austin had his first
Binanggit din ni
in-person
Ryder
meeting
na ang
with his
Chinese
counterpart,
espiya na balon
Secretary
ay may
Galvez,
kakayahang
and
magmaniobra,
reiterated that the
ngunit
U.S.
hindi
commitment to
nagpaliwanag.
Philippine security is
Sa isang
ironclad.
nakaraang pahayag
The
ng
Secretary
Pentagon, sinabi
expressed
ni
his
Brig,
appreciation for the
sinabi ni
Philippines'
Jen
approval
Ryder
of
na ang
4 new
gobyerno ng
enhanced
US
defense
ay agad na
cooperation
kumilos
agreement
upang
locations,
protektahan
and
laban
both
sa
Secretary
pagkolekta ng
Austin and
sensitibong
Secretary Galvez
impormasyon
noted
kahit na
that
hindi
the
niya
PDCA
idinetalye
is a
kung
key
anong mga
pillar of
hakbang ang
alliance
ginawa.
cooperation and
Sinabi rin
supports
ng
combined
gobyerno ng
training
US
exercises
na ang
and
Chinese espiya na
interoperability.
baloon ay naglakbay sa
Separately,
mga
the Department of
sensitive
Defense
sites
announced
sa
today a
Montana.
significant new package of security assistance for Ukraine. This includes the authorization of a presidential drawdown of security assistance valued at up to $425 million, as well as $1.75 billion in Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative funds. The presidential drawdown is the 31st such drawdown of equipment from DoD inventories for Ukraine. In total, the U.S. has now committed $32 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since 2014 and $29.3 billion since Russia's unprovoked and illegal invasion nearly 1 year ago this month.